I knew he was impressed afterwards when his brother texted me and said, "When do I get to tour the Premier's office?"
Coach Devin here, and I am super pumped. I have the Premier of Nova Scotia, Mr. Tim Houston, with me today. Mr. Premier, thank you for coming.
Man, I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
So the first thing I'll tell you, it's interesting because I've known you for a little bit. It's a little different calling you Mr. Premier. I was thinking last night of like, I have to say Mr. Premier, right? Like I know that's what we do, but it's funny how it feels weird when you know somebody.
I think it's pretty weird too. I can't convince my wife to call me that, but but I'll tell you a funny story. I was one of my best friends was up in the city, and he kind of knows I'm a politician, but he does his thing, I do my thing. And he was in the city, and he said, "You got any time?" And I said, "Hey, come up to my office." And first off, I think he was kind of surprised that I had an office. And then like the pretty one government house. I mean, it's a pretty prestigious place, right? And I knew he was impressed afterwards when his brother texted me and said, "When do I get to tour the Premier's office?" Right? So it's kind of, yeah, it's an odd feeling, but I'm so honored to be the Premier. Like there's only been 30, and sometimes I stop and think about that, right? And say, wow, you're only the 30th Premier of the province. So I understand the weight of the position. But certainly it's the opportunity before this province, and to be sitting in the chair and have the one who can unleash the potential, at least play a part in it. It's pretty exciting for me, for sure.
So that's actually right where I'm going to start. So it's interesting. I thought it was interesting. Election night, and like I said, I know you pretty well. Election night, I was thinking, what's funny is most of us, like if we play sports as kids, you might win a championship, or if you're lucky or something. You've actually won a bunch of things as an adult, and most people don't. Like maybe you play beer league hockey or something. People don't do that. Like you won to be an MLA. You won to be the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Yeah.
Then you're the leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there on election night, and most of it, like there's only been 30, most of us will never feel this. What is it like to sit there and go, I am winning this thing. I'm going to be the Premier.
It's election night is an incredible experience. I will say that. Like even, I was elected in 2013, reelected in 2017, and both of those times, like when they pull your name out and say, "Hey, your community has put their faith in you," it is an incredible feeling that I wish everyone could experience that feeling. Election night was, because of course the polls, the pundits, everybody thought we were going to get wiped off the face of the earth. But during the campaign, I could feel the momentum. I mean, if you ever get a chance to hop on a bus that has your picture on the side and travel this beautiful province, I recommend it. But every time I got off that bus in a community, I could feel this positive momentum. So I knew that there was something happening, right? And then on election, heading into the election that you remember, then the media started to say, well, maybe this is going to be a little bit closer than we thought. Maybe it's going to be so close it could take days to decide this.
Right.
Remember when all this is happening, right? It's going to take so long to count them. And then on election night, 1 hour after the polls closed, the CTV said PC government. And it kind of like, I'm like, wow. So I didn't kind of believe it then. It needed a bit more time. But when it was, I'll tell you my favorite night, my favorite memory of election night was just my kids and seeing them grasp what had happened. And my daughter is she's kind of a political watcher. She's in law school. She kind of follows politics, and she goes door knocking with me when she's around and stuff like that. And my son kind of does like his thing, rugby, hockey, and he kind of tries to steer a little bit clear of it. But when it was all said and done on election night, I just remember the kid giving the kids a hug. And I remember my son saying to me, he just kind of whispered in my ear and kind of choked me up right now thinking about it. But he said, "Dad, I'm really proud of you." And it kind of, at that moment, I realized that we'd done something that's important. Now we have to get to work and make sure that we use this opportunity. But it's the emotions of the campaign are incredible, but the emotions of election night are really, really powerful.
I would imagine. All right. So my next question then is, you become the Premier. What was your first moment where you went, oh my Lord, I'm the Premier. Now the buck stops with me. I can't be like, okay, that guy should do this, or there's not. It's you now. What was that moment you were sitting there going, oh boy?
It's like when you're in a meeting with the team and stuff, and when you say, well, maybe we should do this, and people start writing stuff down, and you're like, whoa, wait a second here. I just want to talk about it. But it's like when you realize that how significant your words are, that they can set things into motion. So I've learned a couple times, be very careful with your words. words definitely matter, but it's the government has a big impact on people's lives in many ways that people honestly should never have to think about. They should just be able to kind of live their lives and take care of their family and all this type of stuff, right? But when the intersection comes where something government does has a real impact on people, which is generally all the time, but it's not noticed, so that's a good thing. You just need to be you need to be thoughtful, and you need to be compassionate, and that's the type of government that I want to lead, one that is thoughtful and one that is compassionate. And
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure. Okay, so I have heard a lot, and I'm not famous, so I don't know, but I've heard a lot when you become well known, you become famous, which is what you are now because you're the 30th premier of Nova Scotia, which is freaking cool as hell. People, I mean, you don't change as a person. There's a lot I've always read is people say, I didn't change as a person, but everybody treats me totally differently now, and it's really weird. Have you had that experience too?
yeah. It's what I would say is, even though I've been elected for 8 years and leader of the opposition for 3 years, the day after the election, no longer anonymous. Just
Wow.
walking down the street, it's people notice, and so far, I mean, people seem to be content with what we're doing, so they're generally happy outside of a couple people that aren't that make it known. But I think it's the thing that really surprised me is how recognizable I am, and a lot of people are like, hey, how you doing, or like you see them do the double take and stuff. So I've experienced a lot of kindness in my interactions with people when I've been recognized, and I know there'll be points when it's not always kind. but treating differently, I don't know. I think it's just the people that I come across are kind, that's for sure, and it means something to them that the premier is at that event, or the premier is, and that's a powerful, positive feeling to know that. The impact you can have by you. So it's good. It's all good, man.
So, so one of the things you did during the election, which I thought was cool, and I am not giving myself any credit for your win, by the way, but you did a bunch of videos from your house, just basically talking to business owners. I was on, like I said, it is not me that won that election, but what I found that was the best, I watched all of them. Every single one of them I watched. And I was, as my wife would say, that I was absolutely infatuated with them because I thought they were so cool. What I loved about it was you were just like you are right now. You're totally candid. You didn't try to spin anything or look for sound bites. You just talked. And it felt like everybody, I mean, I know you, but it felt like, I think everybody would say, okay, wow, I know that guy, which is what's frustrating. I think for a lot of people in politics, you hear a lot of sound bites and people saying very stilted things because they're so worried about being taken out of context. What made you want to do those videos?
I think it's just kind of the connection with people. Perspectives matter, right? And every one of us has our own perspective. And it's a lot of times you see government decisions that have unintended ramifications because they didn't. That's going to happen anyway. But I think the more that you listen and learn from people, you can minimize those unintended ramifications. And quite honestly, I just like people. Like I just like meeting people and talking to people and learning about their story, right? So that series was fun. When I was running in 2013, my first campaign, I had this experience where I knocked on a door and the dog ran out. So it became this frantic scene where me and the homeowner were chasing this dog, and it was just over. Like it was just kind of this wild thing. And when I went home, I went on Facebook and I wrote this like a diary entry. I'm like, "Dear diary, this is what happened today." So I started to do that during the campaign. Just the experiences you have. They're not all positive. Lots of them are, but you kind of share them. And people say, because usually you look at political Facebook and social media. It's, oh, what a great day on the campaign trail. Everyone's voting, like all this type of stuff, right? Everybody like, and then so you if you're real about like, well, look, there was a couple door slams, there was a couple, then people kind of gravitate. They find it interesting. So, but what I remembered from that was towards the end of the campaign, when I would meet somebody, they'd say like, hey, I feel like I know you. I read your diary every day, right? So it's that connection, right? Because the people we represent as politicians, we represent people, and we should never forget that. So the positions we advance, the decisions we make impact people. And the only thing that Nova Scotians ever ask is that they're heard and listened to. They know that not everything will go their way in government decisions, but they want to know that the people that are elected cared enough to understand there. So sometimes when I'm making decisions and I know it's going to have a negative impact on certain people, I call them and say, look, we're going to do this over the next couple of days. And I know it's not what you want, but I feel that I owe it to you to be frank. And here's why. And they'll say like, I don't agree with that, but thank you for calling me. Right. So it's that respect. And I think a lot of times the respect is missing both ways, from elected people and then towards elected people. So anytime we can kind of just be kind to one another, it goes a long way. It makes for a better province.
I couldn't agree any more with that. I think that is super important. And a lot of people, especially when we see Americanized politics, nobody it's just insanity. And I hate when I see that. I used to say all the time, I will never vote for somebody who runs horrible attack ads, because then I just think, man, you're just being a jerk. Like, don't be rude to people. Be nice. Because I try my best to be nice to people. I feel like as a Nova Scotian, and I'm an adopted Nova Scotian, that's kind of who we are. And we actually give a darn about people, and we're trying to be nice to people. And it's just ripping into people. I'm completely with you. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think Trump had a serious impact on he made it seem like you have a license to be rude and disrespectful to people, and he did it at the highest possible stage. And if you look on social media, there's a lot of people that kind of think it is okay, right? So, but I don't read too much on social media anymore right now. I called my mom one night, and I could tell she was crying, and I'm like, Mom, what's wrong? And she's like, I'm just reading what they're saying about you. And I'm like, well, don't do that. Why are you doing that? I don't do it. But it was like you got that morbid curiosity. So I went and read some of it, and then I was like, then I call her and I'm like, now I want to cry, Mom. But it's like, you just have to shut out the negativity and just focus on what's possible for this province.
I completely agree. I say the same thing about COVID stuff. I don't read comments anymore because it's just so various wild conspiracy theories and rants. I'm like, oh, that's enough of that. All right. So my next question is this one, actually a two-parter. All right. So the first time you had, and we're not going to get into really COVID, but the first time you had a press conference, trying to get that word out. I don't know how that was so hard with Dr. Strang. You had a great line to start it. I thought I laughed out loud when you said it, and you said basically worse to the effect of, Dr. Strang has to bring in a new co-star. And I thought that was so funny, and people were cranky about it. I thought it was fantastic because I know you and I know your personality. I'm like, that is real, and it's true. It's hilarious. You want to say that one?
Well, it's true. Like, Dr. Strang has been the constant, and he's kind of led us through this pandemic, and Nova Scotia has got some really positive international accolades, really, for how we've handled the pandemic here. And Dr. Strang has kind of led that charge. And as the elected official, starting with Premier McNeil and then Premier Rankin and myself, we've kind of had, I don't know, courage enough to listen to them. You've looked in other jurisdictions where the politicians said, no, I don't like that politically, so I'm not doing that. So, but here in Nova Scotia, the elected officials they've listened to public health, and it's served Nova Scotians well. So he's been through 3 premiers, and this guy's been the one constant, right? So as long as I think that Dr. Strang can lead us through the pandemic, so we pay close attention to him.
So that's my next question, is Dr. Strang always comes out, he's so serious and so calm. Tell me something about him that we don't know, because what we see is he's a very calm, straightforward guy. And if you disagree with him, don't agree with him, he's just calm all the time. And I'm curious, what's his personality really like? Because I used to see him in the grocery store when I lived in Fall River, and we'd say hi, but I don't really know the guy. What's he like? Like, tell me something about him.
I will say, here's what I would say about Dr. Strang. I mean, I've had a chance to meet Dr. Strang's wife and kind of just talk as people like about family and stuff. I have so much more respect for him the more I get to know him. It's incredible. But he's incredibly humble. After one of our first press conferences, when we left and we went out back, he kind of looked at me and he goes, "Was that okay?" Like, you're asking me? How was I, right? So I mean, like, he's he just cares about this province, but he's incredibly humble, and he is a nice person. He really is.
That is probably one of the coolest stories, because you know what? I know everybody. I mean, I do the same thing, right? None of us are completely confident all the time.
Yeah.
But looking at the guy, you would think he was just as cool as a cucumber all the time. The fact that he said that, it just makes him more real to me. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and he's a steady hand for me. I mean, we've had a couple different little clusters of outbreaks, and I'm like, "Oh, what's going on here?" Right? And he's like, "No, it's got, he is a steady hand at the wheel for sure on that COVID stuff, but he's no different than us. He's just I'll always remember that, because it kind of like, really.
All right, so I got two more questions on. So the number one, what would be, if you could pick one thing that you want to be defined for as a premier, not COVID related, something that you want to do, you're like, okay, I'm going to put my stamp on that. That is important. What would that thing be, and why is that important?
Well, it's two things, and I know exactly what they are, and I know why, because I was leader of the opposition for 3 years, and there wasn't a lot of highs when you're leader of the opposition. There's a lot of like, oh man, and I remember one of my good buddies said to me, I was driving to the city one night. It was quite late. We were talking on the phone, and he said, "Listen, man, for everything that's in front of you, I have complete confidence you will be the premier of this province. You will be." And at that time, I'm like, "Well, okay, And he said, "But now my question for you is, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, is anyone going to care? Is anyone going to remember that you're premier?" And I was like, wow, And he's like, "So I want you to think about what is it that you think is possible for this province that you're the person can make happen." And that was like a powerful thing. Like, it really, really forced me to go deep into myself. And the government that we have right now, we have a great team. Like, some of those, Alan McMaster, we have a great team of MLAs. And powerful members on the opposition side too, that to hold us to account. But what I think is possible in this province is two things. I want to be the government that kind of right sizes the demographics. We need more people in this province, and we need to get we're kind of an older population, so we need to balance our demographics. So right sizing the demographics, and making sure that people can access the healthcare they need. Those are the two things, and I think they go hand in hand. If we right size the demographics, we'll take a lot of pressure off the healthcare system, and have a lot more people, working and paying taxes and paying in, so we can fund the healthcare system. So I think, we're going to tip over 1 million people in this province over the next couple of weeks. That's a very, very significant milestone for our province. Of course, I've been pretty vocal. I think we can double the population. I think 2 million people is a good start. And if we have the right mix of younger and older, and then just making sure people can access healthcare, because it's a lot of stress. It's on people's mental health when they worry about, are my parents going to be able to get the care they need? Am I going to be able to get it? Are my children, my loved ones, my family, right? So those are the two things that I'm really focused on, and people will see that in everything we do.
That's awesome. I love that. All right. So last question. What is the coolest thing? And this guy, whatever you can think of, what is the coolest thing about being the premier? Just the coolest thing, you're like, wow, that is pretty cool. I get to do that, or that's something that people are interested in. What is that thing that you go, wow, okay, that's a cool thing to do?
Yeah, I think it's back to almost what we said about before. When I say something and people start writing stuff down, I'm like, whoa, okay, we can make stuff happen here. It's just I think it's the potential, like having the ability to unleash the potential on a lot of different things, like when I say, why isn't that being done? Why isn't it? And people say, well, yeah, let's do that. Right. So, but I think it's, it's being part of a team that can take the steps to work towards those two goals, the demographics and the healthcare, right? So it's an overarching thing, but it's a number of things. You know, when your buddy's brother texts you and says, "Wink, and I tore the premier's office," and you kind of, you know, all those things kind of go together. But this is a great. I love this province. You know, I've had opportunities to live elsewhere. You know, Nova Scotians generally come home. We came home, and you know, we wanted to raise our kids close to our family. So I love this province. When I tour this province, it's just beautiful. You love it even more the more you see of it, the more you're around it. So everything is before us in this province. We just need a government that can do what it's supposed to do in healthcare, in education, and you know, in caring for people. So I'm really excited about where we're at, and I couldn't be more proud to be part of this government right now.
And I think you really wrapped that up really well, because for me, I'm originally American, born in Chicago. My parents moved here as a kid, when I was a little kid, to Cape Breton, because they felt like the U.S. was going in the wrong direction. This is not a healthy environment. I have an older brother. They didn't want us to be in the military, you know, stuff like that. My dad's ex-military, which he's not a draft dodger. He actually did it. And I feel the same way you do about that. I feel like Nova Scotia, my dad says all the time, we may have a couple problems, but Nova Scotia is the best place in the world to live. And people sometimes kind of forget that because you're in it. You forget how beautiful it is. You forget how kind the people are. You just kind of lose perspective. And I think it's amazing that you have that perspective, because it's exactly how I feel about it too.
Yeah. It's all before us, man. Keep doing what you're doing too.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Keep kicking butt. I think you're doing an awesome job, man.
Anytime, man. We'll be back. Talk to you soon.
Take care, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.